Hello, everyone. So I had this long speech, but I've completely rewritten it because Eric was telling me what I needed to say today. That's a great thing about retired folks from NC State. They tell you what to do every day. So our friends here from France, I've got two things to say. First, I got married on Bastille Day. So I celebrate that every year, and I think my wife does too. And we have a business school from France on NC State's campus, Schema. So I hope while you're here that you visit your colleagues. We have, much to the pleasure of the students at NC State, we have 300 French students here every fall, and they rotate with another 300 every spring, and we enjoy having them on our campus. So I want to cover really three things, and I know we're tight on schedule, so I want to leave a little time so you can ask me that probing question you've always wanted to ask the Chancellor about our football team. So I want to talk a little bit about, quickly, an overview of NC State for those that haven't paid attention to it in a while. I'm going to talk a little bit about the opportunities at NC State, and I want to talk more, and I think this will generate some questions and conversation about the challenges facing public higher education. And for our friends from France, public higher education means it's paid for by the citizens. Sometimes across the globe, public and private gets confused. And so for us, I'm going to be talking about the challenges that we face in public higher education. First, the overview of NC State. We're the largest university in the state of North Carolina with about 35,000 students. We're larger actually than any single campus in South Carolina, Tennessee, or Virginia. So we're big, but I don't think we'll be the biggest for much longer. Charlotte is growing at very rapid rates, and campuses like VCU and Virginia Commonwealth University in Virginia are growing very rapidly. And I've told our team size in this case isn't what matters. What matters is effectiveness and quality. And so we'll talk a bit about that. But we are the biggest. We have a budget of about $1.5 billion. We've recently done, in collaboration with the community college system and private higher education and the whole UNC system, an economic impact analysis. And for your information, NC State's economic impact, every year we contribute $6.5 billion in added income to the North Carolina economy. Now, how do we calculate that? I don't know. But we hired a consultant to do it, and they had to fly here. So you know the definition of a consultant is anyone that has to fly to your university and brings a briefcase with them is an expert. And this group had a lot of briefcases, and they studied the impact of your alumni, the impact of the companies that come out of your universities, and NC State contributes, and it's a conservative estimate, around $6.5 billion. $1.2 billion of that is from the companies that we spin out every year. Last year, for example, we started 10 new companies at NC State. Some of those companies you've heard about in the past, companies like SAS, came out of NC State and now has about 6,000 employees, and Cary is the largest privately held software company in the world. And its two founders were both from NC State and are on the Fortune 500 list. That's all I'll say about that. And we've also spun out a company that's also bright on everyone's radar screen called Cree. Cree is one of the leading LED lighting companies in America, and it was 4 PhD students in material science and engineering that started that company years ago. They actually thought the company would be focused more in a limited niche market in defense applications, but now they're all over the market in terms of LED lighting and the efficiency of LED lighting. So that's an important thing to remember. When you're thinking about supporting your universities across the state and across the nation, more often than not, universities are at the center of economic innovation. The way I like to think about it is we're necessary for innovation, but we're not sufficient. In other words, a strong university is a critical part of an innovative ecosystem, but in and of itself, it's not sufficient. It requires the private sector. There are many great universities in very rural parts of the country that have a limited economic ecosystem. I'll use one example. I know it very well. University of Illinois at Champaign and Urbana. That's a great university. But if you've ever been to Champaign and Urbana, you know it's not the mecca of economic enterprises and activities. So it's a great university, it's necessary, but in and of itself it's not sufficient. So when you think about the region we're in, what is so valuable is the universities that make up the triangle, and you know who they are. Some of you have allegiances to those other institutions, Duke and Carolina. Those three universities play a big role in creating the economic ecosystem that we have here in RTP. And Raleigh enjoys, Durham enjoys, and Chapel Hill enjoys. But it's the private sector that really takes the technology out of our universities, like this young man that's a senior at NC State that's taking his education, creating value through entrepreneurship. So it's an important part of what we do. It's an important reason why you should support your universities, because it plays back into the economy in big ways. And that's why we believe on the opportunity side, one of our biggest opportunities is through entrepreneurship. Through helping our students see opportunities, we like to say that we want our students to be as prepared to create a job as to take a job. And that means starting companies, building economic prosperity. If you look across this country, from the last 25 years, a large part of the economic vitality of America has come from companies with less than 100 employees, new companies. In fact, one could argue that most of the economic growth in America has been those type of companies. Yes, some of them become really large companies, but many of them just create value and are acquired by larger companies. So just remember that all these startup activity that comes out of our universities plays into the ecosystem we're trying to create. I'll give you a couple of examples that have been at the national news lately at NC State. One from the College of Textiles, a graduate of 2013, a woman named Sharon Boyd. Sharon went on Shark Tank. You know this show on television? She went before 4 investors, pitched her company called Frill, which is a company, it's a textile company that's designing fashions for sorority girls. Turns out these girls buy a lot of clothes. Having 2 daughters, I actually understand this. And they often are interested in purchasing clothes that have unique features associated with the sorority they belong to. And this was the business plan of starting the company, which is now branched out to all of college apparel. And Sharon went on to Shark Tank and actually had the sharks fighting over her. And ultimately she got, for her company, over $100,000 of new investment, and turned down an offer of twice that amount because she was a savvy entrepreneur from NC State and knew the person trying to give her $225,000 wanted too much control of her company. And this is a company that's starting and doing well. Another example you may have read about, which was 4 bachelor students in material science and engineering. All of us have read about the growing concern over sexual assault. This is a difficult subject to talk about, but on college campuses, many young women are sexually assaulted. Often this occurs and it's aided by date rape drugs. And these 4 young men developed a chemical test to allow the testing of the presence of a date rape drug in a woman's drink. And it's on their fingernail polish. So they swirl, the young woman can swirl her drink with her fingernail polish, and if the drug is present, it changes color. Now, I'm not going to suggest any type of color change that might happen. In the triangle, we're very sensitive to colors here. So it could be red, it could be blue, I'm not sure. But in my mind, these are social entrepreneurs. These are young men using the highest science to solve a real world problem and do it in a way that's discreet. I mean, yes, you can buy on the market now test strips that allow you to test for the presence of this drug. But that's a little awkward, I think you would all agree. To be in a bar and say, excuse me while I whip out my test strip and see if you've given me a drink that's been tainted. But excuse me while I swirl this with my undercover color fingernail polish might work a little better. So this company's up and running. They've received over $1 million in investment. They're on Centennial campus, a great group of young men that are doing something with their science. So there are many other examples of this. So when you think about NC State, and I know I got to get off, NC State is one of the original land-grant universities in the country. Do you all know what that means? In 1862, Abraham Lincoln signed into law when the Southerners were gone. Remember, we weren't there. Signed into law the Land Grant Act, which gave every state the right to sell 35 acres of federal land to create an endowment to establish a college to teach mechanical arts and agriculture. At the time, higher education in America was largely focused in law, medicine, and theology. And we needed, as a country, a more practical education. Now, we can thank Nebraska for the creation of NC State, because North Carolina had no federal land in the 1880s by the time we came out of the Civil War. So we sold 35 acres of land in Nebraska to create the land-grant university of the state. Every state's got one. We were talking earlier, I'm from Purdue. Purdue is the land-grant University of Indiana. Everybody thinks it's private. It's not. It's public. There are 5 land-grant universities, public universities, not named after the state. Who can name them? It's a test. Rutgers. Clemson. Cornell. Purdue. Auburn. You got them all. All right. That's amazing. And I mean, if you think about it, that was one of the most transformative acts in American history, to create public universities focused on the economic needs of the region, the states that they occupy. Every state has one. Many states have 2, because in the 1890s there was a second act for the historically black colleges. Our second is A&T, North Carolina State A&T University. Little history. You don't have to pay anything for it. I'm a member of the club. It's extra. So USA Today recently came out and said, what are the 5 most critical jobs for America in the critical areas of education? Engineering, computer science, mathematics and science, agriculture, and natural resources. Turns out we do all of them. So we play a pretty important role in the state. We're a different university than Carolina. You need both of us to be strong. Okay, we're very different. And we take pride in what we do well. Carolina takes pride in what they do well. The state has been very true to our mission. They said, NC State, you do agriculture and engineering, textiles, applied science and math. Carolina, be the leading liberal arts university in America. Do law, medicine. We have one professional school, it's veterinary medicine. So if your cow gets sick, we can take care of you. If you get sick, I'd go to Carolina. Although if you've been in our small animal hospital, you may want to It's pretty nice. The accommodation's not as good. You'd have to sleep in a crate, but we have all the bells and whistles. So let me quickly talk about some challenges and then stop and see if you have any quick questions. So I think the biggest challenge facing America in higher education right now is access and affordability. Higher education, the cost of higher education around the world, and particularly in America, has gone up, particularly in public higher education, at a higher rate than inflation for about 20 years. Now, I will tell you that if you look at the total investment of dollars, in constant dollars per student, we've actually gone down in the amount of money. And so here's the thing that a lot of people don't fully appreciate, is states have been divesting themselves of higher education. And they've been divesting themselves because they can, because there are other people willing to pay, and they have to because of Medicaid, cost of prisons, other things. So state investment in higher education has gone down dramatically across the country. Not as dramatically in North Carolina, thanks to the General Assembly. We still are one of the most affordable university systems in America. In a recent, every poll in America that lists the best bang for your buck in higher education, we're on it, and Carolina's on it. Currently, the best buy in higher education, Carolina's number 1, we're number 4. You ought to pat yourselves on the back and say this state has done something remarkable, because what we believe in is affordability and support from the state. That belief has been shaken in recent years with challenging budget times, but we still invest heavily in higher education, and it keeps us the most affordable system in the country. And we are, without a doubt. When you look at public universities, somebody mentioned Clemson. Who's a Clemson grad? I know you are. It's a wonderful institution. Their tuition is about $13,000 a year. Ours is $7,500. Now here's the difference. If you're a citizen of the great state of South Carolina and you kind of get the kind of grades that you need to get into Clemson, you're going to get a scholarship that pays for about half of that. We don't do any of that in North Carolina. So our view is to keep the cost low, make it affordable for everyone. Other states have allowed the cost to go up, but have invested directly in the students through scholarships. So look at the total bottom line. It's different for every state, but it is an increasingly difficult time. I look at the gray hair in this room, and I know that many of you grew up in an era where most everybody that wanted to go to college could. But when you got there, the professor said, look to your left, look to your right. By the end of the semester, I'm going to get at least 2 of you to go back home. Now the students compete very hard to get into our universities. They're very prepared because the high school systems are stronger and graduation rates have gone up. So it's a different world now, and so that translates into challenges with access. Students can't get in the way they used to could. Our university, we had 23,000 applicants, and we admitted 9,000, and we'll enroll 4,500 of them. So a lot of kids don't get in. But we're a system of higher education, and there are alternatives too. I tell every parent, if you want your kid to graduate from NC State, they can't get in as a freshman, use our outstanding community college system, use other universities as a vehicle to get here, and if they do well, they will make it to NC State. Let me stop and see what kind of questions you have.
Is it true it's easier to transfer in than it is to get in as a freshman?
I wouldn't say easier, but it's easier if you've not done as well in high school. And the reality is that we're not particularly good at college preparatory work. So we're not good at remediating. And so I think a student that needs more attention and getting prepared for a place like NC State, then transfer is a good option, because you're going to start off making better grades. So your transcript is going to be stronger. If you come to our place not well prepared, then you're going to have a hard time overcoming, the way you perform early in your tenure. And the community college system in the state has gotten so much stronger. So I think it's safe to say that it is, I wouldn't call it an easier route, but a different route, one that recognizes you may need more help getting prepared. Yes,
You were talking about the cost, and as a guy now that has kids in the university system here in North Carolina, why is there such a difference though between like NC State, UNC Charlotte, East Carolina, and large universities? The tuition isn't real, there's a significant difference
There is.
just in this state.
well, it really has as much to do with the mission of the university. If you have a university whose mission is economic development and research and being a leading scholarly institution, it's going to be a more expensive place. Everything is more expensive. The faculty are more expensive. They teach less because they're doing more research. And so Carolina and NC State have the highest tuition. Fayetteville State, Elizabeth City State have the lowest tuition. And it's really related to the cost of supporting the institution. But even at our cost, we're half the price of most public universities of our stature.
What would happen to the cost of tuition if we did away with professional athletics at the college level? Scholarships and all?
It wouldn't affect it one iota because it's all paid for by the folks that watch ESPN. I tell people that are upset about the cost of college athletics, I said, turn your TV off. Because the real driver for college athletics are the patrons that enjoy it, and enjoy it through ESPN and Fox and others. So at NC State and at Carolina, athletics is entirely supported by those that watch it, pay tickets through the conference, through our television contract for the ACC is, $2 billion over an extended period of time. So it's big business, and it's not subsidized by the state at all, our tuition, including all of their facilities, which they have to pay for.
And they don't contribute anything to the rest of the university?
Yes, they do. Thank you very much. Yes, they do. They contribute in two significant ways. First is through the reputation they bring to the university and the trademarks. So every time you wear the NC State pin, the hat, which a lot of it is driven by athletics, money comes back to the university through trademarks. The second is athletics subsidizes the university for the university's investment in them. So for example, all the cost of facilities and administration, all the business office costs, all of those things, all of the academic support cost is all paid for by athletics. So they transfer money to the university, not the other way. And you want me to hush pretty soon.
What are the fastest growing areas for undergraduates right now? What are the most difficult areas for undergraduates to get involved in?
I'd say that the fastest growing area for us is the business school, which has become very competitive. You always have, human biology is always going to be a big major because of pre-med, but the fastest growing areas for us are in engineering, mechanical engineering, biomedical engineering is a new emerging field, and those are fast growing fields. Thank you.